Hi guys, and welcome to this watercolor tutorial where I will paint a beautiful light pink rose. I initially thought I would take a rose photo from the internet because it's always easy to just draw something that is already there, but I didn't really found a nice picture, so I just bought one and took the pictures myself, and I think the photos really came out nice to paint from them. And initially I painted another rose on my Fabriano paper, but I noticed that with this subject, with the soft flower petals, I prefer the Hahnemühle paper because I can use a certain type of technique that I can't use with my Fabriano paper. So the Fabriano paper is very good if you like to draw a huge part or percentage of your artwork, and the Hahnemühle paper is very useful if you want to paint 100% or maybe 90% with watercolor and only use color pencils or normal pencils to just add some details. But for this rose I completely painted it in watercolor and I didn't use any pencils, so you just see a pure watercolor painting, and I think this could be interesting to see. I also didn't want to start with drawing because the flower blossom, so the rose blossom, I find it more easily to just start and just make the form very loosely and light so that it has the freshness of watercolor. And I'm trying to paint the most important and the main shapes of the flower petals, and I'm working from light to dark. So now I'm adding those darker areas around the flower petals and just working out all the shapes that I see in my reference photo. And the technique I use for this painting is a very useful one, and it is not very difficult to just copy or try out yourself. You just paint a darker color with watercolor, and then you go in with a wet brush, and then you take off the color that you just painted. So I use this technique to smoothen out specific areas, or also like the flower blossom, and I also use it to get the details and the petals right in the center of the rose. So because I'm not getting everything right at the beginning, I can just correct some of the forms and just take off some of the darker areas, and so I can get very smooth edges, and I think this is good for the flower petals because they have to look smooth and soft. And that's why I prefer this paper, because on the Fabriano paper I can't take off some of the watercolor that is already sunken in the paper. It's like sealed. But with the Hahnemühle paper I can just take off the watercolor even if the area is very dark, and I also can do it. I also use this technique to get some light effects and some very interesting and nice looking smooth areas in the leaves and also on the blossom. And to finish the rose blossom, the last part is that I take white watercolor, which is not super opaque, not 100% opaque, but it is still useful if you just want to lighten up an area a bit. So I use this part at the last step, and I'm just looking at my reference and look where are the lightest areas and where do I have to add some light effects. So this is my last step, and after that the flower blossom is finished and I'm happy with it. And now I'm continuing with the stem of the rose, and for this part I decided to draw it down because it is a little bit more complicated, for me at least, than painting a rather round form like the blossom, so I just took a normal pencil and drew the form down because it's easier. So, and this gray ugly shape you see in the video is my eraser. This ugly little thing is very useful though, because you can knead and work it in every form and size you need it, and it is very good for the paper because it doesn't damage the paper the slightest bit as every other eraser would do it. So you get those. I get mine at the Boesner store, but you can also get one in an art supply store. I just work all the time with them because they also don't have any crumbs that fall off when you would use a normal eraser. So it's not only very practical, it's also very clean, and I really prefer this eraser. So, and the last steps of the rose is to paint the stem and the leaves, and I started with the darker colors, and then I just used the technique I just talked about, and I take off some of the areas of the darker areas again and use it to make a smooth border to the stem, just to have a nice effect and to give the watercolor a bright and loose feeling. So I hope you liked this watercolor tutorial, and if you like my videos, don't forget to give them a thumb up and subscribe to my channel. And if you like to see more of my painting tutorials also about oil color, you can support me on Patreon for the $5 reward tier. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and I see you soon. Bye bye!